One underappreciated car from the early 80s into the 90s was a Chevrolet Cavalier, specifically a Z24. The one that pictured is actually a convertible top. While early on in the 80s, this car came with a 2.8 liter V6 that only produced 130 horsepower. It was offered in a 5-speed manual transmission and also a 4-speed automatic. From 91 to 94, they also produced a 3.1 liter V6 that produced 140 horsepower with 185 foot-pounds of torque. And while I say underappreciated, back in the 90s, these cars got a mile per gallon of 17 city and 26 on the highway with an average combination of 20 miles per gallon. With factory ground effects, a rear spoiler, and amazing paint quality, brand new, these cars as fully loaded as they could be would be around $20,000 MSRP back in 94. If you were in high school and you weren't coming home and driving mommy and daddy's 540i BMW, then this was definitely the car that was turning heads. Get your friends in this car, take this car down the track with a 15.9 quarter mile time, which is a laugh compared to what's out there today. This car was very impressive for its time. Next up, I chose a Pontiac Grand Am. Call it a grandma car, call it what you want. This car came in 2 doors, 4 doors, and also in a GT version, and later on a GT Ram Air version. While Pontiac was gearing towards their driving sporty enthusiasts, Pontiac's quote was, "We build excitement that you've got to try. Built with a feel for the road, exciting to drive for feeling alive." Whether you were in a 2-door or 4-door from 94 to 98, this also had a 3.1 V6 that was offered with 155 horsepower at 5,200 RPMs with 185 foot-pounds of torque at 4,000 RPMs. The Grand Am also came with a 2.3 liter 4-cylinder that had 150 horsepower at 6,000 RPMs and 145 foot-pounds of torque at 4,800 RPMs. Step into 2003 where the GT holds 175 horsepower 3.4 liter Ram Air V6 with a cold air induction. The engine produces also 205 foot-pounds of torque and mates only with a 4-speed automatic transmission. Stomp the gas down a quarter mile in the low 15s, and on a cold enough day, if you were lucky, you could get a 14.9. While today some of the 4-cylinders with over 300 horsepower and turbochargers can laugh at this Grand Am, if you were driving this car back in high school at the day, you were definitely not getting laughed at by somebody that was driving a K car. While laughing at Fords through my younger years and not really being attracted to the looks of them, here's another underappreciated Ford, a 1994 Ford Taurus Shell with 220 horsepower, 6,000 RPMs, and 215 foot-pounds of torque at 4,000 RPMs. The Show's 3.2 liter engine also has a larger bore than the 3.0 liter version, which allows for more torque while maintaining the same horsepower. The Show can go from 0 to 60 in 6.6 seconds and also has a top speed of 143 miles per hour. Rolling on to 1996, when you didn't think ugly could get any uglier, voila. But what was not ugly was under the hood of this car. It was actually a 3.4 liter V8 produced by Yamaha with 235 horsepower, 230 foot-pounds of torque. It was an overhead cam 4-valve engine. It also weighed 3,480 pounds, and it would carry down a quarter mile in 15.7 seconds. For that weight of a car, it was pretty impressive. Hop in this car, and it would actually pull you back in your seat. Moving on to 2015, I don't know if you'd say this car got better or uglier, but what wasn't uglier was under the hood. This Ford Taurus Show has a V6 with 365 horsepower and 350 foot-pounds of torque. It's a 3.5 liter EcoBoost engine as direct injected and turbocharged to produce V8-like performance while still being fuel efficient. The torque is generated across a wide range from 1,500 to 5,000 RPMs, and the small turbochargers help minimize lag when the accelerator is pressed. The Taurus Show also is all-wheel drive, mated to a 6-speed automatic transmission with steering wheel shift paddles. With just a tune and a catback exhaust and a cold air intake, see yourself at the drag strip smoking some Mustangs and some Camaros. Well, here we have a 1998 Pontiac Grand Prix GTP with me growing up in the 90s and driving a 91 Chevrolet Lumina Eurosport. These cars were considered W bodies. Working at the General Motors dealership, as I started off as an apprentice lube tech, the guys in that were older and they're senior techs would call these W bodies wasted bodies. Now looking back, even though these were front-wheel drive enthusiast type cars and they were not rear-wheel drive, even some of these senior techs would probably look back and look at these cars compared to some of the stuff that's made today and say, wow, they were actually a quality car. While the Grand National faded away in the 80s, manufacturers were pushed for tighter emissions and better fuel economy, had to turn to front-wheel drive vehicles to eliminate drivetrain components. While eliminating a rear differential and a drive shaft, they could lighten these cars up and also eliminate drag with less drivetrain components. After years of dreaming about this car, I finally found a 1998 Pontiac Grand Prix GTP that I paid $2,800 for back in 2008. With 158,000 miles on this car, wide body design, roaring like a tiger, and fun to drive, unbelievable, I decided to take it to Lake George Car Show with my ex-girlfriend. If anybody was familiar with Lake George Car Show, there's a little gas station up there called Valero across from a campground on the road. Everybody would stand there waiting for cars to do burnouts, but in order to get into Valero to park in there and watch the other people do burnouts, there was one requirement. You basically had to tear the tires off the car until people were happy and the crowd would move and let you in. Well, my girlfriend at the time, in embarrassment, covered her face. I set the good old-fashioned e-brake in the back of this car and basically put it to the floor with the traction control off. The crowd was screaming in hysterics, wondering how this kind of a vehicle was actually front-wheel drive. Bouncing off a rev limiter, hardly being able to see anything, the crowd cleared and let me come in. While these cars still get me excited today, and if you're lucky to find one that isn't rusted in the junkyard, congratulations to you. In 98, pushing out 240 horsepower and 280 foot-pounds of torque at its input shaft, a front-wheel drive mid-sized car with a 3.8-liter V6 and a 4-speed automatic transmission, the Grand Prix GTP also had a curb weight around 3,400 pounds. They also had a GTX Ram Air version of the 1998 Grand Prix and up, and basically it was 260 horsepower at 5,200 RPMs and 290 foot-pounds of torque at 3,200 RPMs. The SLP Grand Prix GTX Ram Air can have up to 260 horsepower with a forced air induction K&N filter and free-flowing exhaust. Later on, 2005, I don't actually have the picture here because I couldn't find it copyright free, but the 2005 Grand Prix, in my opinion, wasn't really that great looking. That had 260 horsepower right from the factory without the GTX Ram Air, and also right around 295 foot-pounds of torque. If that wasn't enough in 2005, they also put these cars equipped with a V8, a 5.3-liter familiar Chevy truck engine called the Grand Prix GXP, with 303 horsepower and 323 foot-pounds of torque at your front wheels. If you didn't know what torque steer was, you learned very quick with this vehicle. Well, fun to drive, and every mechanic's nightmare. If you had seen this 5.3-liter underneath the hood of this car, you wanted to basically run from it anytime one came in for the shop for just a water pump. Did somebody even say serpentine belt? I think I'm going to call in sick today as an auto tech. Well, the technology in this V8, displacement on demand, which deleted this car to run under light load down to 4 cylinders, you could achieve 17 miles per gallon in the city and 26 miles per gallon in the highway, and basically a combination of both about 20 miles per gallon. While manufacturers today are screaming, let's put screens in these cars and make bigger and bigger screens and technology and Google at your fingertips, most GTPs came equipped with a little boost gauge in the information center, a factory 6-speaker Bose system with amplifier, sporty leather seats with bolsters, and lumbar support for the driver. These cars were a nice place to be in. Well, somebody in their Acura Integra said, I'll smoke you in the corners. The Grand Prix, known on its commercials as wider is better. This 3,400-pound car would have you thinking you were driving a Corvette in the corners. Well, I like putting these little informative videos together. If you like this video, consider subscribing. Thanks for watching. Comment and let me know what your favorite cars from 90s into early 2000s were.